We've had a really good 2 runs the last 2 years. We got into a position after the national championship game in '06 where we said we felt like we had a chance to make a run. Colt got hurt, and we didn't finish the season well. And we came back and did beat Iowa and got back on track. And then the next year, it was a year where we started poorly. We got better during the season and kind of fizzled at the end, and came back and fought hard to get Arizona State in the Holiday Bowl. But we did not feel like those 2 years were years where we knew every time we walked out there that we were going to win the football game. The last 2 years, even though our team was underrated to start the year last 2 years ago, it's a team that became a team with enough confidence that every time we lined up we thought we could win. And then this year's team, it would have been a disappointment if we didn't win, because there's still some disappointment for our kids and our coaches that 13-1 is not what you want when you have a chance to win all the games. So since the national championship game, we've gone right back to work. It's really an interesting time when you have to change leadership because new guys have to step up. It's a chance for some veterans who haven't played to play, or some young ones to get a new spot. So spring practice is really an interesting time for all the players. It's new hope. It's a new team. Even for a guy like myself or our staff, you have to start like it's your first day at Texas. And you have to reinvent your team because each team's a little bit different. You never understand what your chemistry is going to be like. You never understand who your leaders are, and you're constantly trying to teach them and build them, but you're really not sure who and what they are. And then you always try to tweak who you are to your personnel. Sometimes you don't know who that is coming into spring. Garrett will be different than Colt. Colt was very different than Vince Young. So one of the cool and interesting fun things this spring will be to see what changes we're going to make, because Colt became a guy who was as good as anybody in the country's ever been at throwing and completing passes. And we couldn't get away from that because he was so good, 70-something%. You're going to complete 7+ passes out of 10. It's hard not to use him as your weapon when you go in. So the second year in a row now we haven't had a staff change. The good of that is the continuity, because of the only losing 2 regular season or 2 games over the last 2 years. The negative is you'd like to have some new ideas. So that's what the change would be as you look at it. So we're currently looking across the country at a lot of different people. We bring in pro guys. We go to different places. People come to visit us. For instance, the Boise State offensive staff's here this morning, and they're going to stay through Friday. So it'll be we've got great respect for Chris Peterson and what they've done on both sides of the ball. So we're constantly trying to share ideas with them, and our staffs visit with people a lot. One of the negative things about starting this early in spring is you don't have a lot of time to get new ideas. One of the negative, or the positive thing is our guys are still excited about getting back because they just got out of bowl practice and they're ready to go and they've had great off-season work. We've worked every morning, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at 6 in the morning since they got back on middle of January. Nobody's been late. They've been very competitive. They have competed with each other at the highest level. We're having a lot of competitive games in their off-season program, and we're marking down who wins every time. And we're not only marking down who wins the match, if it's tug of war or wrestling or whatever it is, but we're giving points to that side of the ball. And then the side that loses has to carry the trays for the other one at lunch, and the side that wins gets a milkshake, unless you're a lineman. Then you get something dietary. But a lot of new faces in the spring, and it's fun for them to have their chance. Even a guy maybe have been here 3 years and hasn't had a chance, in his mind has a chance. On the negative side of that, there's much fewer players. A fourth of your team's not here for next fall, and now that we're all playing freshmen, it really hurts you. So you don't have as much depth in the spring, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But we've told the older guys that get you a spot this fall or this spring, or we're going to look at other guys in the spring, or get your spot this spring, or we'll look at other guys in the fall. So that's fair. So don't come in August and say, Coach, I want my chance. No, you've got your chance right now. So these spring practice days will give you an opportunity to step up and show what you can do. We should have a very physical spring because we got so many young guys that need to play that haven't played very much. When you've got an older team like last year's offense, some of those guys didn't need to hit a lot. I learned something from Steve Spurrier a long time ago. He said that the older guys don't need to hit much because they've been playing 3, 4, 5 years. The younger guys need to hit a lot because they haven't tackled much. They've got to get used to the speed of the game and being physical. But you've only got so many great snaps out of your seniors. So if they've done everything right every time they play, be smart with them. You don't have to have them out there looking good every scrimmage and let some other guy step up and earn his stripes because those guys have played a lot of snaps during the game. Leadership is always something that concerns you. Last year I was really concerned at this time about our defensive leadership. And it happened. The coaches did a great job of making it step up, and you look at McElroy and Sergio Kendall and Lamar Houston and Earl Thomas really stepped up. Blake Gideon and those guys became great leaders on our defense. Our offense had leaders built in. Coming back with Quan gone, you had Jordan and you had Colt, you had Ulatowski, you had Chris Hall and Charlie Tanner. So you had some older guys there that you felt like knew what they were doing. But now what we do every time we meet is we put an asterisk by the guys that we feel like are leaders or the guys that should be leaders. We put an asterisk by the ones that a different color asterisk by the ones we feel like are concerns. And if they're a leader and they haven't bought in, it can be a very negative situation. One of your best leaders that doesn't like you as a coach, your philosophy, or your team can hurt your team more than anything else. When you're thin in the spring and you're looking at young guys, we're doing more cross-training than ever before. It's something that Dick Tomey brought us. He always said in recruiting, you ought to try to sign a guy that can play 11 spots. And the more spots a guy can play, if he can't play the one you thought he could, he has other opportunities. Quarterbacks, it's more difficult. For instance, Garrett's going to play quarterback. He's not going to play any other spots. But if you can get a skilled guy, defensive end, maybe could play tight end, outside linebacker, two ends, both of the defensive end spots, it really helps us when we look at that. And we'll talk about depth chart more in just a minute. Marquise Goodwin will be on track alone. That was our agreement with him coming out of high school. So he will not participate in spring practice this spring. And we think he has a chance to get to the Olympics. He is really, really special at what he does. It was obvious to us that he didn't work out all summer with football. He didn't catch a ball till he got here, and he looked real good and real fast for us. So we think he is an outstanding player for our future. He's done everything right. He's becoming a leader on our team. He had outstanding grades, and we think he can do the same for track that he did for football this year. And we'd like for him to be one of the best track stars for our track team in the country. Injuries, those will be released by John. You may already have them. They won't let me talk about them a lot. In spring, you can get by with some guys like Aaron Barnett is freed to practice, but he is not going to be able to have full contact. So we'll put him in a green jersey. He can do everything, but he will not have contact. He'll be in position to have contact. You just got to be careful with his shoulder that he doesn't get knocked down or fall down. And usually the kids handle that pretty well because it gives him a chance to be out there. Blaine Irby's situation has simply not changed. He is in a position where he will miss spring, and they'll continue to monitor him, but he will not be out there this spring. Ian Harris, I think we had said before, Ian is a young man that got a medical, and he will no longer play football. I think that was back in the spring. End of last spring or first of the fall. We look at, let's go depth chart first. And this isn't in writing because these are just ways that we line them up based on how competitive they've been in the off season. At X, you'll have Malcolm Williams and Greg Timmons. The tight end would be Greg Smith and Ahmad Howard. You got Trey Graham. We're also moving. You got Barrett Matthews that's going to play H-back and tight end because instead of just using a fullback, we'll have some two-back concepts with a quarterback under the center in the spring, and it'll go back to the H-back will be our fullback. So it can be a fullback, H-back, who would be a wing that motions back and forth like you see in the NFL a lot, or he could be a tight end. So Barrett Matthews is in that group. You're also looking at Dominic Jones, who will not play defensive end this spring. He's moving over to H-back, fullback, tight end, and he will be fun for us to watch. At the same time, we're taking all of our big backs that are tailbacks, and they'll continue to be tailbacks, but they also will cross-train at the H-back position. So Cody Johnson is a guy that will play tailback, but he will also play H-back. He's played some fullback for us. You start looking at Chris Whaley. He's a guy that will play tailback, but he's 250, 60 pounds. I mean, he's really big. He can play H-back as well as that group. So that'll be really interesting for us to watch and see how those things tie together. Even though 45% of the NFL now is in the shotgun, we do feel like that we want to keep our shotgun runs, but limit them. Not have a package where we felt like the zone read would be huge for Garrett, because it never was great for Colt. He did it in some games, but it was great for Vince. So we also found out that more of our explosive plays over the last 2 years have been with the quarterback under the center. The percentage of explosive plays has been better. So we'll move our backs around some. We will have our quarterback under the center more. We will use more play-action pass with our running game, but we also do not want to get into a position where we throw out our passing game. It has been so good. So we'll still have our 3 and 4 wideouts. We will still be up-tempo and try to go no huddle. So there will not be changes from those standpoints. We just want to run the ball more and run the ball better. In 2005, we averaged 250 yards rushing and 250 yards passing. And that's what we would like to do every game. You'd like to be 50-50. And then if there's too many around the line of scrimmage, you'd like to be able to throw it 60%. And if there's just giving you the run, you'd like to be able to run it 60%. So that's what we're working back towards. Without getting into all the depth chart, James Kirkendall would be starting at wide receiver, Brett Mitchell at right tackle, Michael Huey at right guard, David Snow at center, Trey Allen at left guard, Kyle Hicks at left tackle, John Childs at flanker. The sub-B position is the one that James Kirkendall is playing. You'd have Trey Newton lining up at tailback. He'd be backed up by Fozzie and by you've got Cody and Vondrell. We do think that Vondrell may have some new life in Cody with more downhill runs, because that's what they were used to in high school. The B, sub-B, is when the fullbacks split out. The B position for us, or H, would be a fullback, or H-back, which would be Barrett Matthews and Dominic Jones, and our big backs. Mason Walters will not participate this spring. We've talked about that. That should be on your list. And we really need to do a great job of looking at those young linemen, because we lose 4 of the 5 offensive linemen for next year. So this backup offensive line and the ones we're signing this year and the next year will be key as far as stepping up and trying to make sure that we can continue in the offensive line with older guys. We also said the goal for spring got to run the ball better, get our backs alignments and pass back down, because it will be a different type running game. Identify the starters who can step up and help us the most. Each year we go through, it's like a draft, and all of our coaches get in different rooms, and they take the guys on their side of the ball, and they actually write down who they feel like the most important player on offense or defense is. And they have a point system, and the guy with the most points, they give to me the list, and then I can go back over it and see who I feel like my opinion would be, because I do the same. And we match up and see who the coaches trust the most, and we tell the players that, and then basically show them some of that. Defensively, You've got Okafor and Eddie Jones at the buck. You've got the three technique, Howell and Higgins. You've got the nose guard, Keyston Randall, Derek Johnson, Sam Acho and Mims at the other end, Dravante Johnson and Nakapra at Sam, Ernest and Tariq Allen at Mike, Keenan Robinson and Ryan Robeson at Will, and Jared Norton will be limited at the first of spring as well. I think he's probably on the list, isn't he, John? So that's why he's not listed in this group. Christian Scott at safety. He and Vaccaro and Wells will alternate at safety along with Blake. Curtis Brown and A.J. Williams will be at the left corner. They'll alternate. And Shockey Brown and A.J. White, the young freshman, will be at the other corner. And Aaron Barnett will be involved, but again, because he's limited with how much he can hit, then he will not be listed in the two deep to start with. Defensively, we felt like that we need to do a better job in the red zone. Those are things that we did really well 2 years ago. We didn't do near as good a job this year. We wanted to continue and be a big play defense, score on defense, and force the turnovers that we did this year. Because for whatever reason, it was so much better than last year. And we need to do a better job defensively of defending two-back running teams. And we feel like the fact that we will have a two-back running game now will really help our defense in the fact that they have to line up and stop it every day as well. Kicking game, you're starting over in a lot of areas. You've got you lose your snapper. Nobody ever knows the snapper's name unless he messes one up, so nobody knew Will Harvey's name. And that was really good because Will snapped every ball good for his 4 years at Texas. So you've got 2 or 3 young guys that will be snapping. We try to get them work in the ball games, but you never get them as much work as you want to. Then you've got to come up with a new holder. Jordan's held every ball for about the last 4 years. And then you've got to come up with a punt returner because you lost Earl and Jordan, both of your top punt returners. You've got to go back and look at kickoff returns because you've got to see DJ Monroe is on that list, I think. He's limited with a hamstring. So we got to find some. We really need 4 to 6 guys on kickoff returns because those guys get hurt some. We would look early at Justin Tucker taking Hunter Lawrence's place as our kicker because he gets it up really high, and it's one of the things like in the Nebraska game we like so much about Hunter is that his ball jumped up and was very, very hard to block. The one that got blocked against Colorado was very, very poor protection. It had nothing to do with Hunter. And then you also look at John Gold and Justin Tucker in the punting area. And then we signed the young man, Will Russ, who can do both of them. Right now, you would like to see Justin kick field goals and kick off, and you would like to see John be able to handle more of the punting duties so you could take some of that pressure off of Justin. We're looking at trying to figure out what scheme would be best for the 2 punters. John's got a great leg, so we're going to try to use a protection that we haven't used before that's halfway between the rugby punt and the regular punt. We'll slide protection so we can go right or left because it's something we found that's easier to protect. The one that was blocked this year was a personnel problem. It wasn't the protection problem. And we feel like that it's something that we'll look at this spring to see what we can do as well. And we also, like everybody else in America, need to continue to look at kickoff coverage. It's hard to do. It put us in a bind. We looked up, I think Alabama was 117th in kickoff coverage. So the team that won the national championship was 117th, and the next best team's mad at every kickoff. So because we don't cover like we want to. So it's a hard thing, and we've all got to continue to look at that. We also wanted to do a better job of dropping the ball inside the 10. We're playing better defense. We need to play better field position, and we feel like that's something that Justin and John Gold should work on a lot because we've gone for 4th down so many times in that 35 to 40 yard area. When we cross the 50, we do feel like we can back some people up.